I'll get the coffee this morning. You stay in bed. Your coffee's ready. Was it something I said? Look, I just want to talk about it, okay? I think I know what it is. Is it the competition that's got you like this? Is that what it is? We've had this discussion already. Sean hasn't even started yet. And guess what? He just bought an all-road project car. He's not going to finish anywhere near in time. And Blake? You heard about Blake? He's going STK. Not even Tyler can save that build. Hey guys, welcome to an episode of PB Garage. If you enjoyed that intro as much as I did, then you've come to the right channel. Please let me know that I'm not insane and drop me a like just to give me a bit of reassurance that I didn't go over the top with it. Welcome to this video. Basically what I want to do is go over some of the parts that I've chosen for my stage 3 build for my B5 S4. There's a competition going on right now between Sean, Blake, and myself. We're all building 2.7s. We're all taking a slightly different route with our builds. Sean's using XSPower billet turbos. I'm using OE K04s, and Blake's doing an STK, a single turbo kit for his build. Basically what's going on right now is Sean's got the parts sitting at his house. He's doing nothing with them. I've got a lot of parts sitting at my house and they're out on the table right now, so I'm doing nothing with them as well. And Blake is just trying to figure out how to install his downpipe to try and clear his firewall and his engine, so he's not going anywhere fast. For me, I really started to get excited about B5s, that chassis, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. My first car was an Audi 90, and I did a lot of work to that car. At that time, the B5 was relatively new. The S4 was kind of, you know, if you're into Audis, that size of body, that was the car to have. I got a job at a car dealership where I was detailing cars, used cars, new cars, that sort of thing. We had a used Imola B5 S4 tip transmission come through. The transmission was garbage, but I had a chance to drive that car and I absolutely fell in love with it. At the same time, I had another job where I was working in a hobby shop and was getting into racing remote control cars quite extensively. And it all just kind of melded into this this passion for cars and anything mechanical, and that kind of helped drive my career in engineering, is what I do right now. Not automotive, but still just you know, all things mechanical. So the more I learned about cars, the more I realized that I really liked the Audi platforms, the all-wheel drive. The B5 S4 for me was the pinnacle of kind of a mix between comfort, performance, size, power, handling. Fast forward about 17 years and it's about 2018, I think, is when I bought my B5 S4. One came up for sale locally and I checked it out. It had an engine issue. I'd helped negotiate the price down a bit lower, but the body was really clean, and I knew that this was a good candidate for me to have a car that I could keep in, you know, for a long time. So that's really what's driving this build, is kind of a long-term vision, something that's fun, reliable, but something that I can still grow with. The modifications that I'm doing right now are largely limited to engine modifications, but I'm also addressing some suspension upgrades as well. Also, a lot of maintenance things. I'm not trying to compare different brands of parts. I'm really just going to present what I've chosen and why I've chosen those parts. So again, if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe. If there's something about the video that you don't like or want me to do differently in the future, just drop a comment in the comments section. I'm always happy to get constructive criticism. This is all very new to me and Sean and Blake, to, you know, doing these videos. So please just help us out and build our channel by giving us some feedback in the comment section. Before I start talking about turbos and intercoolers, I want to talk about the engine first. I posted a video recently where I was assembling the engine, so check that out and I'll give you a bit of insight as to what I did. But in general, I've upgraded the connecting rods on this engine. The rest is stock. I replaced, obviously, piston rings, crankshaft bearings, connecting rod bearings, checked all the clearances. When I go to swap the heads and accessories from the other engine, the engine that's in the car, I'll replace all the seals, make sure everything's fresh and nice and tight. In terms of cost, the connecting rods I bought from a forum member. I paid $200 for them. They're the max speeding rods. And again, you don't really need those for an entry-level stage 3 build like I'm doing with the K04s, but they're nice to have. So just something to consider. And obviously the only other costs that you're looking at is all the rebuild parts, so the piston rings, the bearings, and all that, seals, whatever. And that'll vary depending on your build. For turbos, I decided to go in the end with OE K04s. My original plan was something bigger, which kind of drove my decision to buy upgraded connecting rods. And then, things changed and a good deal came up on these K04s. These were $1,800, or just over $1,800 US, and kind of fit with the entire build theme of being like an OE plus type build. As for intercoolers, these are SRM. I'm not sure what version they are, but I think it's either 2 or 3. I emailed them and they said that their latest version measures 10 by 8, so mine are 9.5 by 8, and then the thickness on the latest is 4.5, and these are 4.5 as well. The other difference is the diameter of the inlet and outlet. Mine measure 2 and 2.25, whereas the latest versions have 2.5 inch inlet and outlet diameters. Basically my requirements here were just an upgrade that didn't require modifying the front bumper. The SRMs have a very good reputation for being one of the better intercoolers at a good price, so this was a good compromise. There's not a lot to say about inlets. There are a few options out there, from low quality to the RS4 OEM inlets. These are the 034 replica RS4 inlets, and I paid $250 for these. In my area we don't have E85 fuel, so I wanted to give myself a little bit of cushion with the octane rating. Also, our summer temperatures can get fairly high in the 30 to 35 degrees Celsius range, so I decided to add a water meth injection kit, and that will help keep both those things under control. The kit by AEM comes with the pump, the tank, the controller, and a whole pile of cables and hoses. My plan is to either mount the pump in the engine bay or in the trunk with this tank. If I mount it in the engine bay, I'll use the windshield washer fluid reservoir instead of the supplied AEM tank. The controller will go in the cabin. I don't expect a lot of horsepower with this kit, but it's just something that intrigues me, and I'm anxious to try and see what kind of results I get. My fueling setup looks something like this. It's not fully locked down yet, but the injectors are. So these are 62-pound Bosch genuine injectors, and I picked these up from the forums again for about $225 US. This is not the fuel pump that I'm going to use, but it's just to show that I'm going to replace the fuel pump. The stock one I think is adequate, but just barely, so I'll be looking to procure something a bit better. If you guys have any recommendations, please just drop that in the comment section. I'd be happy to hear those. For the mouth housing, I decided to 3D print my own. The 034 setup, which is one that I was considering buying, is I think just over $300 US, and that comes with the housing and adapter and the hose. This one does all the same things, although the only addition is it has the flow turbulence screen inside of it. So this will mate to my S4 airbox, connects to the RS4 accordion, and uses a Hitachi sensor. Onto the exhaust. My requirements for the exhaust were good fitment and sound. Sound was a big one for me. I didn't want something that was too loud, especially on like cruising or part throttle, but I wanted something aggressive under wide open throttle. And based on what I read online and watching YouTube videos, this one seemed to meet those requirements. Another thing that helped was the sale. So I got this on sale for about $700, and the other system that I was looking at was a Billy Boat, and it was about $1,100. And this will meet the power requirements that I have with the turbo setup. So it's a 3-inch system. In addition to this, I'm running XSPower 2.5-inch catless downpipes. So moving on to some drivetrain related items. First up is the flywheel and clutch combo. I didn't want a aluminum lightweight flywheel. I wanted something that felt very much like OEM, like stock feel. I also didn't want a lot of chatter, so that drove me to look at the B7 RS4 clutch. And you buy this on Rock Auto for about $150 US, a really cheap setup, and it'll hold the stage 4 power, assuming you're not launching the car, so that's just one caveat. I don't launch the car unless it's somebody else's like Sean's, but mine I would never do that. That's just not good for the driveline. The flywheel is a TTV flywheel. They advertise as a light flywheel. It's not aluminum, it's still steel, but it's just a bit lighter than stock. And it's designed specifically for the B7 RS4 clutch, so you got to make sure you have the right part number. This one's 3509, and the flywheel was $465 US. So everything together, it was just over $600 US. Comparatively speaking, my other option was a Ringer Racing Stage 4 clutch with the flywheel, and that was tipping the scale is at like $1,400. So this coming in at less than half was very attractive to me, and why I really decided to go this route. Depending on the condition of your transmission, how old it is, or how it was driven in the past, you may want to consider a JHM 1.2 Synchro upgrade. Mine drives really good. There's no issues with it at all. It doesn't have that high mileage on it, so I'm just going to leave it as is and see how it does. And if it does fail down the road, then I'll address it at that point. The only thing I really did to it was clean it up really well and then paint the two sections back here with black paint. Regarding engine mounts and transmission mounts, that's something else I haven't locked down yet. I don't really want to go poly because I don't want any NVH transmitted into the cabin. So I'm considering OE RS4 type mount, but I have yet to figure that out. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave that in the comment section below. I'd be happy to hear those. So now on to some of the more chassis related items. The AWE Drivetrain Stabilizer, I didn't intend on buying initially, but it went on sale, and also my mentality of using like rubber engine or transmission mounts. This may help with any excess driveline movement. It came with both types of mounts for that price, so I'm going to start with the poly one and see what the NVH is like in the cabin. I don't think it's going to add any based on what I've read, but I'm going to still kind of just try it with a critical eye and see how it goes, and if I don't like it I can always switch to the rubber. Okay, on to the suspension. I'm not going to do anything with the lower arms in the front because they're already pretty new. I've upgraded to the aluminum knuckle and changed the wheel bearings so they're brand new. Check out my Audizine thread, you can see a bit more details on that. In the back, the lower arms, I changed the bushings in those already. So check out the thread again, I have some more details there. For the upper arms, I picked them up on eBay and the bushings weren't exactly that great, so I picked up another set that I can just take the bushings out. It's kind of slow time, so I'm going to do that pretty soon. They've already been sandblasted. I'm going to press these out, press the new ones in, powder coat this before I do that obviously, and make them look real sharp, and that'll kind of refresh and finish up the back end of the car. So I've removed both front and rear subframes from the car. My plan is to have them powder coated. For the bushings, I was looking at going OE, just taking them out, putting new ones in, but then got the idea to make them out of aluminum, so I'm going to make a video on the design process and how I'm going to make those in my garage here. At the moment the car is sitting on stock shocks and H&R lowering springs, and I don't really like the look of the balance, so like if the front looks a little bit lower than the back, and also I wanted to give the car a bit more planted feel in corners, tighten it up a bit. So these H&R Premium Performance Coilovers went on sale at the time I was thinking of doing these upgrades, which is very timely. It was $1,500 for the full set, and they're very nice. Like the Premium Performance has the aluminum bodies for the front shocks, and they're so light, like just really nice. The fit and finish on these, the materials they use, like OE bump stops included, stuff like that just really solidified the deal for me. And to take that one step further in the back, I decided to buy the 034 rear sway bar upgrade, and that comes with these poly mounts for the bar itself. And I also opted to buy the subframe reinforcing brackets. I think these are mandatory if you're going to upgrade rear sway bar, because the subframe will actually tear. And I picked up the sway bar and brackets for about $480. They were on sale for Black Friday. As for brakes, my car currently sits on B7 A4 calipers, and they work really well. The stock rotor size is 321 millimeters, so I'm considering doing a 17Z upgrade, which would bump me up to the 330 millimeter rotor diameter and just give me a bit more braking power. In the back I have stock brakes, but I am considering doing a B6, B7 S4 rear brake upgrade, which bumps up the rotors from 256 diameter to 300 millimeters. Probably the last performance modification that I've considered in this whole build, all the parts I've shown you today, are tires. Now I bought tires last summer because I was anticipating doing this over the winter right now, and then I didn't want to get it in the spring and then have, you know, my old all-season tires, which weren't very grippy. So I bought a set of Yokohama Advan Apex V601s, and these are like a really good sticky summer tire, and not very expensive either. They cost me about $1,000 Canadian. That's included install as well. So great price on the tire, good performance tire, and when you're building a 500 horsepower performance car, you don't want to neglect the tires, so you got to make sure get some good tires that match the power that the car is going to have, along with the handling too. I mean, you can have the best coilovers and suspension parts in the world, but if you've got bad tires all seasons, it just, you know, you're pouring the money down the toilet. It's just not going to work. So good tires are important. Okay guys, video's almost over, I promise, but I have one last topic that I want to cover before I wrap it up, and that's maintenance. It's something that I think is overlooked on a lot of builds, and while you're in there and you're tearing the car apart and putting all this power on it, it's good to go over and just look at your hoses and your other components in the engine bay and the rest of the car and just make sure everything's up to snuff, because you're really stressing the car a lot more, and it just makes sense while you got everything out to do all this stuff at the same time. So a couple examples here, like oil temperature switch, mine hasn't worked in the last 6 months. Auxiliary coolant pump, mine was leaking all over the place, like the casing was destroyed. Timing belt, idler, my crank balancer, hardware. Coolant hoses, my coolant hoses were weeping at the seams. My coolant hoses, various ones were bulging and looked like they were about to go. Hardware, my PCV spider hose. I swear if anybody in the comments says I should get a catch can, I'm gonna lose it. I wanted to go with OE because the OE one works. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's a nice, clean, slick solution. I don't want hose clamps all over the place and hardware store heater hose, so I got an OE one. Yeah, it was expensive, but it's a nice, clean solution. And I've got a bag of other stuff here. O-rings, sensors, gaskets. I don't even know what else is in here. Hardware, just a lot of stuff. So basically just budget like $1,000 to $2,000 in extra stuff for your car. You know, they're 20 years old, they've been through a lot. On this particular build, like I said at the start, I'm planning for the long term, so I don't mind doing all this right now while the engine's out. Okay guys, finally that's the end of the video. I promise I'm not going to say anything else, except a few little things. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you like the channel. If you've got any comments or criticisms or suggestions for this build, please throw those in the comments below. This is the first time I do a stage 3, so I'd definitely be willing to hear from some more experienced builders out there. I've got a few more videos coming out in the near future, so keep an eye out for those. It should be pretty good. Thanks again guys, see you later.
Man, I thought it was going to be clearer than the Pontiac pull, but I guess not. Ah, there you go.
So I just zip tied them to the top of the transmission.
And then ran with the MIL light?
Yep.
Okay.
Attaboy.
Yep.
Are you pulling or pushing?
Pushing.
Other way.
Pull up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay, I was doing that earlier. I was like, why isn't it working?